pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have a blue sheet addition, item D. And with that, I would entertain a motion. Oh, we do a roll call. Okay. Yeah. Moving ahead. We're all here, but
Brown.
Here.
Andrus.
Here.
Lehman.
Here.
Underwood.
Here. Yes, thank you. Now, let's move on to that next item, blue sheet there. Motion to. Anchor. Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it is unanimous. Moving on to item number 4, conflict of interest. Does anybody on the board have any conflict of interest?
I don't have a conflict, but just out of the respect of transparency. So 2 things. One, just so everybody knows, I do have a brother that works for Elmer's.
Okay.
Training dozer.
All right.
Won't influence me any way or another, but there's a connection there. But when you're from here, you're really good.
Does anybody on the board have any problem with that? Okay.
And then I also, Elmer's does have a small building that I'm leasing for them.
Boy, it's getting more complicated. Does anybody have a problem with that? We work with, okay.
Just out of transparency.
That's, thank you very much, Kevin. All right. No, nothing that's going to be a problem, I don't think. Moves us to our first public comment. Do we have anybody in the audience who would like to speak now prior to any of the agenda items? All right. Seeing nothing. And I imagine we're not really doing public comment on Zoom any longer, I think.
No.
Okay. That brings us to our action items. We have appointments. We have M&M Contracting is our first appointment. Please, if you would. Just right up to the podium. Thanks.
My name is Ken Nowicki. I'm CEO of M&M Excavating, 17 Old State Road, Galen, Michigan, 989-732-6277. Thank you first for last meeting for kind of taking a breath and letting everybody come back and giving the numbers a chance to come in person. And, thinking about it. Appreciate that. So I don't want to beat a dead horse because we talked about last month. Nothing's changed in our, in our opinion. We feel we're the auditors a little better and should be awarded the job. Basically, the reason we're even here today is the dreaded addendum 2. You all got it in the packet, you read it. We interpreted that everyone had an opportunity to change the schedule. And Elmer's did that, but they also changed the sequence of the job, which is maintaining traffic, and it's totally separate from in the contract. The schedule is 3 pages. Special provision, maintaining traffic and construction sequences, 9 pages, and total different area. So we feel we didn't have the opportunity to bid on the changing of the sequence. And really, I think that's where all their savings is at. If they couldn't change the sequence, I don't think they could save $250,000. Other things that I mentioned last month that the full intent of the addendum number 2 really wasn't followed. That we interpreted that you had to submit a separate bid with all new unit prices showing where that your deduct might be, as well as maybe a traffic plan of, if you just say that they could do it, they really never showed you how it's benefiting the motoring public. So, based off their letter, I'm really not sure how the staff is recommending them as the preferred bidder for award, because other than the money, we don't know what a traffic plan is.
I apologize. What was your name again? Ken. Okay, a question. And I realize it could be a little colored by the situation. In a normal situation, would one day be enough for somebody who isn't, I mean, you get an addition, an addendum, okay? Would one day be enough to analyze the staffing for such a change, do you think? I mean, would you be able to, if you understood that's what the change meant, would one day be enough to come up with an alternate bid to add on the 16th? Because I mean, it was we put out the addendum on the 15th. Joe sent out the addendum on the 15th, and then you guys, the bids were open on the 16th.
You know, it's kind of a loaded question. I'd say with technology and computer programs, if I would have interpreted the addendum the way they interpreted the addendum, I could have, yes, probably adjusted my bid to figure out what kind of savings there would be to go both roundabouts at the same time. Okay. But that's where.
Did you or any of your staff call to clarify the addendum when you received it? When you had questions like that, so.
I didn't have any questions. I just told him it said schedule, and to me, schedule is starting 25th, meet the interim completion dates, and end September 7th, and we can do that. So that really didn't affect our thinking at all.
Does anybody else have? Alan?
I was going to ask Wayne, does MDOT issue addendums within 24 hours of bid openings?
MDOT in their standard and in their contract language, they indicate that they typically won't within 4 to 5 days of the bid opening, but they won't issue addendums.
Wait, no? Do you have anything else you wanted to add, or?
I had a few more notes to speak about. The other thing I thought of since our last meeting was, what if you give the job to Elmers and they get into trying to build both roundabouts at the same time, and there's some unforeseen circumstance that now all of a sudden they can't do it. Utilities in the way, or MDOT says you can't run traffic on 31 for that long, or it's backing up, whatever the plan is, I don't know. But now what do? You go back and pay them that $250. I just thought about that. And just doesn't seem like, it seemed risky and probably not in the best interest of the Grantwood County. And like I said last month, we feel the bid system sacred, and it should be the integrity should be held up. But notwithstanding all that, I think the staff from the start was proceeding with good intentions. They put the addendum out with good intentions. They're probably making them more than good intentions. Elmers is here going to talk, trying to do what's right. I'm here trying to do what's right. Elmers has a great reputation, great family, broad family. I know Todd and Troy, just not Nick tonight. Max, probably the longest. Great people, but so is M&M. So that's one good thing. You got two great choices here, but we feel that to uphold the thinking of the bid system would be the worst job done around. That's what we're hoping to do. Answer any more questions?
I appreciate your perspective, and I appreciate being first on the appointments there.
Yeah. That's twice I get to talk first.
All right. Our next appointment is yep.
Hi, I'm Nick Rod. This Kevin Anderson, appreciate that, and I appreciate kind words. I think that's everyone's aiming for the right intent. That's what's important. We're at 3600 Reading School Road, Traverse City, Michigan, 231-943-3443. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you guys. Appreciate the personality, and thanks for the opportunity last time too, by the way. I really appreciated that, even though it was something I was moved away from. So I think, reiterate what Ken said, Grand Traverse County Road Commission staff has acted in a professional and ethical manner during this process. I feel we have, I feel M&M did. Elmer's followed, in our opinion, followed the bid process that allowed everyone else the same opportunity to propose an alternate to the project. The key word in the to the progress schedule. The progress schedule is a portion of the specs that dictates the dates, order, and sequencing of the job. So in the progress schedule, not just start April 25th and finish in September. It also states that you have to build River Road first, and then you build Cass Road. And when you asked to alter that, we altered the sequencing with the proposed bid. So we feel that what we proposed meets the requirements of addendum 2. Appreciate the opportunity to speak on this speak on this issue, and I guess we're welcome any questions you have on the process.
I appreciate your being competitive and having a different way to be competitive, finding a different way, because I think that that's just good business practice. Okay. Did you have, I think the addendum was a response to your inquiries. Okay. And when did you give Joe the inquiry? I mean, because that wasn't dated. You had that.
I would have to go back to look at my phone call, to be honest.
A day or more.
I'm guessing it was the day prior, if not the day before that.
All right. And did you have any idea beforehand what you were thinking of? I mean, was it something where you thought, hey, let's, maybe we can make this work?
Yeah,
as a possibility.
Well, that's why we asked the question, right?
Right.
So would you entertain an alternate?
Right.
So that's kind of one. It's such a big change that we felt everyone, it was good to get that out in addendum 2 or in addendum to offer people the opportunity to bid on that, and we felt that addendum 2 did that.
And then clearly, I mean, they wouldn't know what the other bid was, so I mean, it's all in good faith and everything.
Yeah, right. So that's the whole
Yeah.
point. And so we do this frequently with our jobs. We're pretty invested in the communities we work in, so we try and offer. If we see a better way to do things, we try and ask that question, right? So we asked that question because it's fair for everyone, and it was, in our opinion, it was fair for everyone.
I think I can speak for everyone. You say, please, at any opportunity, offer us some savings.
Right, and especially when we live and work, we use that road all the time. So it's obviously important to us too.
Ellen? Start with guys who haven't had a chance.
Joe?
No, I assuming, what you said, Nick, was that, you reached out to Joe and you felt that, unlike M&M, you felt that addendum would allow you to change sequencing and schedule.
Yeah, the keyword is the progress schedule on that, and that's the portion of the specs that dictates the dates and the sequencing of the project.
Right. Well, I read the addendum, and I've done road work also. I haven't worked I have worked for Wraith Riley, but I have not worked for Elmer's. To be upfront with that, I've worked on projects that Elmer's have paid, but I've not worked for Elmer's. And I, reading that addendum, assumed basically almost any changes, as long as you stayed in the structure of the project, would be entertained versus us not making any assumptions. So, I felt that that's the way you handled that. And that's the way I read that addendum. William sent me the addendum, and I went over it, and to me, I couldn't see where that was against the addendum.
Kevin, did you have anything?
No, I mean, I've read through everything, and it's clear to me. I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right. Well, that brings us to the big item in the room, Item B, Keystone Cass Road and Keystone River Road roundabout bids. We could, yeah. That's
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here for this. I was a little indisposed. I was en route to a cruise, the wedding anniversary cruise that COVID put a stop to 3 years ago. So we finally were able to make it. So thank you very much. So we received bids for the dual roundabout construction project on March 16th and opened those bids. As noted, we had two addendums. Both contractors acknowledged that they have received those two addendums. We received from M&M Excavating Company a as-read low bid of $3,575,654.22, approximately 6.4% over the engineer's estimate, so pretty darn close. We received a second bid from Elmer's Crane and Dozer for $3,598,764.90. That's 7.1% over the engineer's estimate. So that tells us, number one, good set of plans, fairly close, very tight on the bidding from the two bidders. In addition, we also received an alternate bid from Elmer's Crane and Dozer at $3,348,764.22, which is 0.34% below the engineer's estimate. In evaluating the project and the alternate bids, we noted that Elmer's Crane and Dozer had proposed a reduced schedule of 4 weeks, concurrent construction of the roundabouts, a savings of $250,000 to the project if the start date was allowed to be moved to May 31st of 22 versus the proposed April 25th start date. With the attached letter that you have there, we referred to that there. While M&M Excavating was low bidder as per the contract, the benefit to the public of the reduced construction in time and reduced costs for the road users, it appears that it is in our best interest to award the contract to Elmer's Crane and Dozer with the alternate schedule. We looked at that in review. We've got the bid tabs for your review there. And so our recommendation from staff was to award the project to Team Elmer's with the alternate schedule.
go around
with what?
the table. If anybody has any thoughts on this, or
Yeah, I mean,
if you want to make a motion, that's fine, but I just,
Well, we can just start with general thoughts.
Okay.
I mean, my general thought, I mean, obviously, living in the engineering world for 10 years and being part of bidding all kinds of different projects and road projects and being part of the bidding process. While I understand M&M's, the low bid thing. I mean, now as a board member, I mean, what's the best for the public, fiduciary duty, the motoring public, all these things. I mean, to have things change throughout the course and people ask questions and addendums be issued is not new to the bidding process. And for me, and I know Wayne, and obviously this is a good set of plans, and you put the project out to say, this is what we think that it, from a design standpoint, this is how we think we should be built. But we don't build roads anymore. We don't build specialty projects like this. And so people that do it, right, I would rely on them to say, well, I think you're close, but it should be built this way because this is how we do it. And this is how we see it coming. And I mean, 4 weeks of less construction to the motoring public is a huge benefit. And if we can get through almost the majority of the rest of the school year without it being disrupted for buses, I mean, going to the TCAP's bus garages rate, I mean, on Cass and going through that intersection. So plus, I mean, another $250,000 is a savings, and that's the expertise that they bring not saying M&M doesn't, I'm just saying like, that, but this is what a contractor would say is, we can save you this kind of money. To just say, well, we said, our staff said, build it this way and stick to that and stick to the bid process. So is our fiduciary duty to the bid process or our fiduciary duty to the public, right? Which is money, time, inconvenience. And so both are, like I said, both are respected and qualified contractors to build the project. So for me, again, we're getting into the nitty gritty of, to stay true to the bid process. I don't think we deviated from the bid process. I don't know if it's ever been bid this, take a project of this scope. This isn't like, shoulder paving where it's just how much is your asphalt and how many lane miles is it? So, again, like Wayne said, to have them both come in relatively that close, but I think both parties had the opportunity to ask questions, to bring it up. They could have said, hey, could we submit an alternate if they saw something? So to say one stepped up and said, can we do something different? And we awarded that, and the other person had the opportunity didn't. I understand the hard feelings, but at the end of the day, it's not like we told them, no, you can't ask any questions. So, so as far as I see it, it's pretty good.
And then I'll bring it back around because I think we're going to feed off each other.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
Yeah.
I echo your thoughts. I'm more concerned about, did you say that MDOT doesn't allow bid change 5 days before you open the bid? Did I understand you correctly?
MDOT has in their contract language that they do certain cutoffs on items like that. Likewise, they won't take any questions, prior to 7 days before. That's all in their contract documents and their process.
My concerns are more towards how we did the bid process, I think. Because it is our fiduciary responsibility to do the best bang for the buck, as we say. That's my only concern is there's a 24-hour notice on there.
Ostensibly, and that would do that to avoid situations that we feel we're in, maybe perhaps right now.
And that does that, just from my past experience in working with them, MDOT has placed items like that just due to the sheer magnitude of the number of projects that they have on that. We follow the same type of process in that any questions that we get in from bidders is we document those questions, we write those down, we document our responses back, and we share those with all plan holders. That's why we use the current process that we do. We use Mitten so that we can be above board and as fair as possible to all the bidders, so that everyone has an even playing field.
And we're not MDOT. Right, that's state government. That's a whole nother level of bureaucracy. And so, do they have a 4, 5, 7 day window just because of this, like you said, sheer number, but just going through their phone system probably takes 3 days. So I think it's a little different. We're not that level. So it doesn't surprise me we would have different.
Well, I think the bid process, as far as contaminating the bid process, I don't believe that was done. The addendum was put out there. Everybody had a chance to do that. If red flags would have been put up on that addendum, I'm quite certain staff would have said, hey, time out here, we're going to extend this deadline because of that, which apparently no questions came up to trigger that mechanism. And as far as I'm a firm believer too, low bid's low bid, but with an addendum added to the original bid process, it still is part of the process. So low bid is still low bid because they were sealed. So I don't believe that we've contaminated the integrity, because I work that type of work, and back in the day when I was doing it, it was a struggle to get jobs, and low bid was paramount to you, so you did that, and I feel we still did that in this process.
I think I disagree with that. I think we have 2 low bidders, and I really don't like it. I I would prefer that we bid apples and apples, not apples and oranges. And if we want to negotiate with somebody afterwards, or a contractor has a good idea, that's the time to bring that to the table. That's what I feel. You know, both of these guys can do the work, and they're good companies, and I'm sure the project will go fine. I personally, I kind of actually like roundabouts. I really don't like, between the bid process and the amount of roads we have falling apart, I don't like us diverting our money to roundabouts. If you've driven around the county right now this spring, it's sad. And I think we've got a lot of stuff left on the table that promises made by the past road commission that didn't get done. And I personally don't like it. I think we should be working backwards to improve the roads, to make the roads we have drivable. Some are definitely not. And I would prefer us not to use, especially with this bidding process. I really, in my opinion, I think this is a pretty good time to set aside the roundabout and do it next year. And I'd like to fix the roads that we have with this $4 million we're gonna spend. I think that go a fairly long way. And I don't think that you know, I've had heavy trucks. I don't have the fleet Elmer's has, but driving through the roundabouts with 8-axle trucks to me is just a disaster. That they're designed as asphalt roundabouts. Chums Corners intersection can't hardly hold up, and I don't know how thick the concrete is. Maybe somebody worked on it, and they know, but I think it's a foot thick, and it's reinforced, and still can't start to come apart. It's not able to take the traffic. And we're going to take all our heavy trucks, because both of the contractors who do the work we want, paving, use Beitner Keystone as the crosstown artery. And we ought to get some guys in a truck and do a demo about how the trucks wear, how you use fuel. You accelerate, and then you slow down, and then you accelerate, and you weave from one side of these to the left, and then you run the wheels up on the pretty decorative concrete we're going to put in the center of these things for no apparent reason. And I think that you know, and I know people think the traffic is backed up a little bit on Beitner, and we're trying to show that we're doing everything we can to ease the congestion in town, and maybe take a little bit off South Airport temporarily till we come up with a better solution. But the Achilles heel of this truck corridor of ours, if you want to call, that's what I think it is. It's kind of on the, which is how everybody goes, is not our River Road or Cass Road intersection. The Achilles heel is the Chums Corners intersection, of which we have no control. And it's gonna, we're gonna put the roundabouts in, and it's gonna back up from the intersection at Chums Corners to the roundabout at River Road. Because we have not convinced them, the MDOT, that it's important and to do something with that intersection. So, you know, I think we should use the $4 million somewhere else. I know it's only $3.5 million, but the next thing on the agenda is to prove another $500,000 for somebody to babysit either of the bidders. And of course, I think that's ridiculous.
Can I just say two things? Number one, MDOT has the parkway scheduled for next year and the year after to get all that stuff squared away. And then the year after that, they're going out to Interlaken Corners or a little bit further. And then Chums Corners is their next project. And they are widening Chums Corners to 2 through 2 left from every direction. So it is on their radar, but it's because of other priorities they had and money that came in that had to be used for certain projects, which is why they did not finish the Chums Corners intersection last summer like they were originally supposed to.
So the concern is that if we don't do it this year, we can't do it next year, and we can't do it the year after that, but maybe then in 3 years or 4 years, we might be able to do it. Is that,
Well, I'm just saying that is why they haven't addressed Chum's Corners yet. So we are looking to put it in place so that when it's in place, then yes, it is gonna still be a holdup at Chum's, but it's for a couple more years until they get that fixed and expanded.
go ahead, I'm.
Well, I was gonna say, so, that's an interesting concept. If we delayed, what happens to this revenue that we've allocated for this two projects?
Let's go back to what the commissioners promised when we had road millage and fix those roads.
There's no additional money from.
This is not millage money.
None of this is.
This is not millage money.
But it's our
Let's
money.
clarify that.
But
It's our money, but it's
our
not
money.
millage money. Clarify
It's
that.
it's not state
No
money. and
strings
it's not-
attached.
Right. Not mi-
We should use this as we need fit.
Right. It's not millage money.
You know, we have the ability to perhaps get some credibility by the time we get to the next millage. Say, look what we've done. And the public will notice that also and be thankful in many of those cases, I think.
You are chomping at the bit for, you want to
Yeah.
say something, say it.
Yeah, and again, I think it's crazy. I mean, I'm the newest one, right? So my first meeting was in December when I joined this board, and this work was already talked about, discussed, approved, moved forward. We spent the money, the decision was made. We're gonna build these, and now here it is, it's the 11th hour and go, well, I like roundabouts. I think that's fine. I probably agree with everything that you said, Alan. I just don't know. That's another meeting to have. That's a different discussion. Like, this is what we've come to here. If you don't want to spend the money, that conversation should have been a long time ago before we wasted all these people.
I was on the board
time.
the previous year and we never discussed this. Not one time.
Well, this has been planned, this
This has
has
been out there longer than that.
Longer.
Yeah.
It has been out there longer than that.
But I'm just saying, like, to change to divert the entire conversation to something completely different at this point to me.
Well, okay,
is crazy. What's in front of me on the agenda is to approve, the award the bid to build these things.
Yeah.
Now you're saying, let's kick it out 4 years.
Well,
Shit, where's the asphalt price gonna be in
I
4
think
years
there's
from
some
now?
other-
Ukraine and Russia keeps going down, inflation goes up. I mean, you don't like spending $3.5 million. Well, in 4 years, fine, spend $4.5 million. Like, I'm not sure it's gonna be cheaper.
tax base is going up too.
So I don't know if there's necessarily a savings by kicking it down the road. I lean on the fact more of that if we do what we did coming out of COVID and everybody does all the projects at the same time and shuts this town down for somebody who drives a lot, that's crazy. Like, why are we should be communicating with the fact that if the parkway is going to be shut down and this is part of the east-west, the only other east-west corridor that we have, and we're going to shut them down at the same time, like, that's ludicrous.
Well, let me hit some things once at a time, and then I think it's fair that everybody gets another, chance. The already done issue, yes, it's already done. I have a different complaint. I have a couple of different complaints, actually. When we planned it, we planned it. We said we're going to have roundabouts. We're not against roundabouts. We want to do this. This is part of the whole east-west, corridor plan. And as Brad's brought up, they are eventually going to get to the Chum's Corner intersection. But one of my problems is that we sat on a board and our decision is our decisions generally shape what we do. Okay. And it shapes when we do it. And there are things that my complaint, as you might have heard already, is that I really wanted to be a part of understanding what was going to happen at that intersection and what the design was going to be. Okay, and I thought I made it clear at one of our meetings when we were discussing the results of the 4 Mile Road. And I know I made it clear often enough. And this isn't the first time that staff has just kind of, well, we're going to do what we do. That's great. You guys are the experts. You are absolutely the experts, and we rely on you. But on the other hand, are we just rubber stamps? Because whatever you're going to do, then you're going to do it. Well, you know, maybe the time for us to approve or not approve this roundabout would have been before the bids were sent out. Because then we could have looked at it and said, do we need painted bricks? Do we need this particular design? Do we need this extra S curve, which is one of my complaints? I mean, there are other designs that are certainly they're qualifiable. Okay, and I sent out an example. I sent out a sheet of examples of roundabout designs. We're in a rural area, and we've got to have, according to Brad, we have to have ADA compliance. How often do you think somebody's gonna roll a wheelchair across that road? I'm sorry, it's just, how often is that gonna happen? And if it has to happen, maybe we just back off. You know, I look at the River Road as the most important to me, okay? Because I think it's the most dangerous intersection. It at least doesn't have a light. We have a light at Cass right now. We can live with the light for a little while longer. You know, maybe River Road, we do it. It doesn't have as exaggerated a dampening lane, for example. But I can't support the roundabout as it is. Now, the other thing is, on the bid process, we got to clarify the options. We can't at the last hour. It just, you know, I mean, like I say, you know, maybe MDOT is too, you know, they're too big and it's too hard, you know, and so they have to have a week beforehand. But we have to clarify the options in the original bid package. You know, if there's a change and we have to back off the bid date or the opening date, then we do that. Give people at least an option of what, you know, so they know what's on the table, so they know the tools that they can use. I'm not so sure that M&M knew what the tools that they could use. You know, I mean, these are guys that do work just like Elmer's does, but they didn't know what the tools were that they could use. So I have a problem with that. So I have a problem, even though, you know, our fiduciary responsibility is the taxpayer. We want to save them money. Well, that brings us to the other part of the problem. I think there are roads that we need to fix. I've been driving around too, and yes, spring is the absolute worst. I mean, you know, there's a reason there are frost laws. And we're seeing a lot of those reasons right now. And maybe we need to harden our road system a little bit more. Put this off in the meantime. I'm not at all convinced that we need the roundabouts. It is our money. It's not federal or the state money. We don't have to rush to use it. And if we take half of it and put it into our road system, it'll be noticeable. I really think so. And there'll be some people that actually appreciate it. So honestly, I can't support the bids or frankly the $400,000 babysitting costs, as Alan put it. I just can't support it. I don't see it. So we go around again. I mean, you know, you guys can make a motion to accept the bids, accept any particular bid. There's a recommendation, or we can let it die for lack of interest.
Yeah, again, I'm coming on new, so I don't have the history, but it just seems to me, it's almost like we're back to the security and the phone system thing. It's like, well, I didn't like the bid process, so can the whole thing. It's like, well, I didn't like it, so let's not do anything moving forward.
We did move forward though afterwards. We
with part of it. I mean,
the part we were comfortable with though.
but again, the fact of being comfortable with roundabouts in this location is not a discussion for today. That's crazy. I mean, it's crazy to me. The chairman of the road commission says I can't support roundabouts in these two locations.
Why is it crazy?
At the date that we're here to approve them. Like, again, where.
And as I said, I think the day
conversation.
we should have had the conversation before those plans went out to bid. That's when I wanted to have that conversation, and it didn't happen. Okay, this is not about.
I wasn't here, for
Yeah.
that, but I'm
Well,
just saying.
this is not, well, I mean, we were here.
I was gonna say, this is the first time the two of us who were the new people last year have actually had the ability to vote on this.
Wayne wanted to chime in.
I was just gonna ask a question, Commissioner Gilman, if you'd like clarification on the design specifications, we do have via Zoom, we do have our consultant firm, OHM, and their designers, their lead designers who are leaders in the state on roundabout designs. And they'd be more than happy to be able to answer any specific questions or to just even lay out for you the complexity that it took to put these in and the reasons why they're there. Aside from that, if you are introducing the desire that you want to pre-approve all plans prior to going out, that is certainly your, I serve at the pleasure of the board, but I don't know if you really truly need engineers on staff, if that's the point. So I respectfully offer you that. We do have OHM on board if you have specific design questions, if you want to happy to answer.
It's not about pre-approval, it's about working with you on something. I had a very simple request. Look, I am the least experienced as far as roads go in this entire room. I'm gonna tell you that. Everyone in the audience and everybody on this board has more road experience than I have. But there are things in government that have to happen, and if we're a governing body and we have staff that works for us, at least they're gonna respect our requests to see some things before they happen. That's all I'm asking. I'm not making a huge demand, and I'm not saying that I need to pre-approve everything that happens. But this is a big enough project that maybe it isn't a bad thing that we have a chance as a board to look at it. I don't think that's so wrong. It's just, that's just one guy, So like I say, if we have a motion and then a second and we take a vote and it passes, we build roundabouts. And then I'm good with that because that's part of the process. I'm just one guy, there are four more. Grant.
Phil, can you tell us exactly how much have we spent so far to date on those two?
So Keystone at Cass, $695,000. That includes the purchase of the house acquisition, and the River Road. We are at $139,000. There was a couple more invoices that I processed today that wouldn't have been entered yet, I don't believe.
Those are land acquisitions?
No, this is mostly design. But the Cass Road did include the purchase of the house and then some other easements with the adjoining property owners.
And we could use those next year, right? I mean, we bought the land.
We own the property.
Well, I'll put a motion out there and we can get this either in front of us or behind us, because I think we beat this horse to death. I make a motion that we award the bid to Elmer's Crane and Dozer, being low bidder with the addendum included, whichever that dollar amount is. I don't know the dollar amount.
$3,348,764.22.
More or less. So I'll make that motion.
Support.
Kevin? All right.
I am gonna make a comment.
Okay.
Who travels on this road quite a bit. There is a problem. Hopefully these roundabouts will help solve that problem, especially if you get down to the end of Hope Road. Those people that are pulling out of Hope Road, they basically floor it and hope for the best. Because there's 2 times during the day, there's no way to get into the traffic flow. So I'm hoping that the roundabouts, I'm being sure that the roundabouts are gonna help that situation at the end of that road too, correct?
But that should create more gaps up and down through the both directions.
How would that be? I mean, if traffic continues to flow through a roundabout and never gets stopped like at Cass right now, how would there be more gaps?
Everyone enters and exits out of the roundabouts at different speeds and accelerations. And so that by its own nature starts to generate those gaps.
Any other thoughts before we take a vote? Riley?
Andrus,
Yes.
Lehman,
No.
Underwood,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Bailey.
No. Okay, passes. That brings us to item C. Are we gonna have babysitters or not? Okay.
Wayne, you go ahead and get started, and then if there's some stuff that we need to follow up on, I can jump in.
Yes, in consideration of current staffing vacancies and schedules on the workload, construction engineering services proposal for the 22 construction of Keystone Roundabout, Cash Road Roundabout, River Road was requested, and our pre-approved consultant services from firm OHM Advisors. The construction engineering services proposal is comprised of the same team that provided construction engineering services for the 2021 Hammond 4-mile roundabout project, and includes the scope of services as follows: construction layout, construction observation, construction engineering, contract administration, and material testing. Scheduling is targeted based on the original April 25th of 2022 with an open traffic date of September 5th or September 6th, 2022. That end date is not changed at all. Slope restoration must be in place by September 30th of 2022. Final acceptance of the turf establishment July 1 of 23, and final acceptance of all landscaping items September 19th of 2024. Compensation is based on activities performed and billed on a time and expense basis in accordance with the House hourly rate and schedule and standard terms and conditions attached to the proposal. Consultant rate for testing is also included and is also based on time. Estimated expense for the construction engineering services for these 2 roundabouts is anticipated at $450,000. Staff has reviewed the consultant engineering services proposal and recommends board approval to OHM Advisors for $450,000 more or less.
Does anybody wish to talk to the OHM people who are online or have any questions for them, or should we just go to a vote on this?
Yeah, who's
Yeah.
OHM online, you can speak if whoever is speaking for.
You just got to unmute.
Scott?
Hey, everyone, can you hear me?
There you go. Yep.
Yep, great. Hi, everyone. My name is John Caters. I'm the principal here for OHM, and happen to be the designer on the project, and I'm also representing here with a couple of my colleagues who will be doing would be doing the construction engineering. With me is Ben Gowell, who would serve as the project manager for the construction effort, and Scott Fisher, who would be the project engineer. Both Ben and Scott were, as Wayne mentioned, integral for the 4-mile and Hammond project this past year. And they can answer any questions you might have about the scope of services that we were proposing.
So quick question, now in light of a bid with an alternate schedule of 4 less weeks, I'm assuming your $450,000 estimate is probably high at that point then, right? Because you're a $450,000 estimate based on the original bid package without the alternate schedule. Does that make sense?
It does, but because of the way that the change is, and hi, this is Ben Gowell. I should have introduced myself. Apologies, but the way the original schedule was set up, work was not happening on both roundabouts as much as it would in the alternate schedule. When specific types of work are taking place at both locations, we would need to have an inspector at both locations to either monitor that work or perform the appropriate testing. So the 4 weeks does come off of the time of one inspector, but we, in our original bid, had a second inspector estimated for only 4 to 5 weeks out there because of the nature of the original progress schedule. So with the roundabouts being constructed at the same time, I expect it'll come out about even because of the need for that second inspector to be out there more to monitor both roundabouts as they're being built.
All right.
What was the dollar amount for the 4-mile one?
We had a contract, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was 300.
They estimated at 300,000, and today we've spent 240,000. That's pretty much included. That also included utility work in coordination with East Bay Township's work.
Okay.
So just in I mean, being an engineer doing this for 10 years, again, and checking with some other engineering buddies that I still have that are in the business and talking about the services that are being provided, the construction engineering services, staking, testing, inspection, the average kind of industry standard, like what you would expect on a project of this size is anywhere from 12 to 18% of the project would be in construction engineering costs. So OHM right now is coming in at 13%, just a tad over 13%. So, you know, I know the comments being made, we're spending another $450,000, but what they've provided is actually on the lower end of what an industry standard for construction engineering services would be. If you have a discussion about should we hire consultants to do that or should we do it in-house, is a different discussion. But what they provided fits well within what we should expect. And again, my guess is still with the sequencing and the way that, you know, Elmer's built 3031 with the efficiencies of it, I don't think you'll probably spend 2 inspectors out there all the time. So my guess is it'll still come in relatively less, just from my experience. You know, if it was 23% of the cost, then well, let's have a conversation about it. But if we're gonna hire outside consultants, the cost is well within what you would expect. So.
Well, it's not 12% of the cost, it's 12% on top of the cost. I mean, that's.
The value of construction engineering would be 12% of the cost of the project. If you were to hire 12 to 18%, if you were.
Well, you can't do it's wordplay. I mean, it's of or in addition to.
Well, you can't do one without the other. I mean, you can't build a project without having it inspected. So,
understood.
Yeah.
I'm ready to make a motion. I got one more question for Wayne. Did we put this out for bids?
We have pre-selected, yes, we've gone through a process and we have consultants on board. We've gone through that RFQ. Yeah, we do an RFQ, but it's a QBS, quality-based selection, when we put out there. And so we've got several consultant firms identified for large projects, a couple more for smaller projects, for both design as well as for construction engineering, as well as for testing.
So which firms was this sent out to, aside from OHM?
So for this one here, right, so QBS works that you have a top, it's a tiered or top, so you have them top ranked. So OHM is our top ranked for design, as well as our top ranked for consulting engineering. So we reached out to them. We then get their proposal in, we review their proposal. If we have difficulties with accepting and approving their proposal, we then negotiate. And then if we do not come to resolution, then we go to our next consultant firm on it. So based on roundabouts, OHM is the leader in roundabout designs, and for our construction engineering, being that they are the leaders in the roundabout, not only the design, and based on their performance with the Hammond 4 mile, we put out that request to them, to OHM, for the construction engineering services on this. We reviewed that. We found no irregularities. We found no difficulties in their proposal, and we've accepted their proposal.
It's a process, and the other engineering companies that go through this RFQ process and the QBS process have no problem with this proposal, or the process, because it works in their favor for other projects too that they get hired on. So it's a different type of, it's not a competitive bid process. It's a whole different type of process. But those companies that are engaging in that like this process.
And we went through that process before and disagreed with it, but we went along with it on the east-west study.
My only question about the proposal for testing is, being an old paver guy, there's no, the most important thing to me was the liquid that is used to do the glue that holds these roads together. And there's no testing of the liquid in this proposal.
Superpave is a volumetrics testing. So you have your different binders into there and those binders are certified, but it's Superpave is a much different type of process, and it takes into account everything from your air voids, your aggregate, deals with the masses of all those, and is a pretty complex.
But it relies on the refinery certification of this material. There isn't, we don't test it. Which I think is a mistake. I think we ought to send it off to whoever, because the reason sometimes the roads crumble a little early is because the binder is not real elastic, and there's specifications you can't guarantee. It's like we can't guarantee the sand granules and everything are right, or there's enough in the concrete we use. There's the right amount of stuff. I think we should test that.
But you wouldn't test it for each project. I mean, it's a specified asphalt design mix, right? That's made. Reeve Riley make it. Owners makes it. It's an NDOT mix that's specified. So you can give me a specify it, or you can test it every year. You can test it every truck or every day that they're pulling.
I would think you should do some testing. If you talk about testing and you don't want to test.
Yeah.
You test or not want to test? I think we should test it.
All right, Joe.
They could add to it.
Yeah, add a little bit of money to it, test the binder.
I make a motion to accept the construction engineering services of OHM advisors for $450,000 plus or minus.
Support. John, Kevin. Any more discussion? Kylie?
Lehman,
We're not going to build it without it, I guess. So I guess I can't count any further. I'd let Elmer's build it without it. They'll do a good job. I'd save this for $450 million. Well, so I'll vote yes on this.
Underwood,
I don't want to.
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Andrus,
Yes.
Gilman.
No. All right, that brings us to item D, the addition. We're gonna make OHM's payroll for another FTE.
Well, this is probably most of them contract to GEI, but this is a authorization to go out onto the Boardman Floor Valley, going through where the bridge could potentially be, and actually doing some ground point collections before the leaves grow over and we can no longer use any GPS or anything else for flyovers because you're not going to see anything. So they called us, they said, hey, we'd like to get this so it's ready. Even if we decide to change something in the future and not go with them for some reason, this is still information that we're going to need. I think they're just wanting to make sure we don't have to delay for an entire another year starting up and getting this off to a NEPA approval. And so this is just a survey and gathering of data before the tree leaves get on the trees. And they'll be out there hiking through the swamplands for the next month. So
Good time to do it, get her done, that kind of thing. Is anybody want to entertain a motion anyway? So.
I'll make the motion.
Joe?
What's the appropriate?
Approve the OHM.
OHM for 73,000 more or less.
Okay, Joe?
I'll support.
And Carl. Ready? Any discussion, questions, et cetera? Kylie?
Underwood,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Andrus,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Gilman.
Yes. All righty.
okay, we're going to take a couple-minute break while we get reconfigured here for the next one because we've got a display. We're going to show you guys what we did.
per the discussion from last meeting with what we have, where we sit as a commission as far as compensation. So
Okay, we're adjourned for 5 minutes.
take a 5
So, okay, so we're back in session.
Okay.
All right, Brad?
So, per our discussion at the last regular meeting here in March, when we were talking about the fact that it's been difficult for us to get engineers as well as inspectors, we did some analysis and we went around and we tried to look at, number one, why? And number two, to what level? Because we don't want to have too many staff that in the engineering that we don't have anything for them to do during the winter. We don't want to have people that we're laying off every winter. So we got this to a point. There are some things we're going to go through that talk about, you know, how we came up with some of these things. And then we also have a discussion at the end of some things that eventually will be showing some benefit, but there are still going to be certain things that we are forced to consult out on. I mean, you know, when you start talking about bridges, we are not bridge builders. We don't have that many of them. So, you know, there are always going to be some projects that do get bid out. But what we've done is we've tried to look at where do we stand as a road commission? And one of the problems we find is we are getting some people in, and we are doing this to be able to make sure we're retaining them. And the problem right now is when you look at where our low end shop employees come in, if you're just talking about throwing money at engineering, what about the rest of the people that we need to plow snow, to do the pothole patching? We have a lot of problem right now because you can make $21 an hour working at McDonald's up on Airport Road. So, you know, we're trying to look at this, and we were fair. We took a benchmark. We did this against 10 other county road commissions when we had data for the road commissions, and we put a benchmark into them. We selected these road commissions that have a similar cost of living, similar population, and similar MTF revenues. And we did this for every single position within the commission. So we're going to talk a lot about all of the positions and give you an idea of where we're falling behind and where we feel like we can make some tweaks to improve the overall retention. Some of the studies that you're seeing out there now that we have been looking at, you know, they're saying for every time you have to bring a new employee on and then they leave, you're talking about a $5,000 cost. So if you're keeping somebody and bringing them up to proficiency, it's really more like 15,000 because you're having to take away from the productivity of your advanced people to train these new people continuously. So we took these information from these road commissions and we put together these bookends that give a range of where these positions should fall within the pay scale. So it's, you know, this is where these people should be. And some of these people are union, so we have a union issue with some of it, we can deal with that. Others are non-union, and so they absorb more responsibility, they move up. And then we also built a ladder, we'll say a career ladder, so that as people have been here for more years, they have the opportunity. Maybe they come in and they're doing some accounting work, but they don't want to stay in accounting and they want to go do it, work in the engineering for a technician, or they want to go out and build signals with our signal crews. So we did this and we're developing this whole career ladder for them so that they can see as employees where their future life could be here. So these are the counties that we selected, and we will say that for the most part, you know, everything was fairly consistent, that most of the positions we had were available to compare to. We will say that Allegan and Eaton County are well compensated counties comparatively.
Allegan's as close to our county as any. There's a good reason it's first on the list.
And Lapeer and Bay County were kind of on the lower end. So our limits for what we did was 83,000 to 154,000. With our latest census, we have 95. MTF between 10 and 19 million, we have 13. And the cost of living had to be within 10% of our cost of living here in Grand Traverse County. Okay. And then for the roles that did not match exactly, we have an IT manager. Not a lot of other road commissions have an IT manager. We're trying to be more proactive and get things more out there and make it a lot more asset management based. A lot of places don't have a dedicated HR manager. They have somebody who fills out paperwork, and that's about it. So we've got those two covered here because we feel we need them. And so for those positions that did not match, we used ONET, which is the U.S. Department of Labor's way of tracking what salaries and wages are throughout regions, states, and limited areas within the states.
Updated?
Yes, that's updated.
I mean,
Continuous.
they're,
Yeah, they're continuously updated.
All right.
So what we looked at, by the time we said, okay, what do we need to put our people into these benchmarks and what do we need to deal with? What we found is our road maintenance worker tier 1 is our lowest entry level position in the crew. And to get them to be within that benchmark, we would need to put them up 9.3%, which would bring them up $1.78 to $21 an hour. This is actually, you know, right now, very low, because this is somebody that has to have a CDLA. And when you look at some of the CDLA drivers out there now, they're getting paid a lot of money for cross-country trips and everything else. So, you know, while that's the highest percentage, because they are at the low end, it's $1.78 an hour for them. But it does bring them up into that $21. And that is what we feel is at least in the market for the smaller firms. You're not going to compete with an Elmer's for their dollar amount that they're paying. You're not going to compete with a Reith Riley. But there's other advantages we have. We work about 40 to 50 hours a week. If you're on an Elmer's crew, you're working 6 days a week, 10 to 15 hours a day. So it's a totally different environment for them. So then you take it to within admin, and because we have this rolling scale out in there that we would look at for balancing where the crew would need to be, the lowest member, the equipment operator 3, to get them to be within this bandwidth for the skill set they have would need a 3.6% increase. So we would be looking at putting the highest member of the crew up 3.6%. And then because of the fact that we have foremen that should be compensated more than their highest workers, they work more hours than their highest workers, and they need to be responsive far more often, and they are working a lot of hours, plus the responsibility that they have. So within admin, our highest increase would be among the foremen, which is at 7.3%. Other people might get a little bit more than 3.6% if they fall outside that benchmark on the low end and they need to be bumped up to be put into the benchmark. But the rest of the admin would then fall into like roughly a 3.6% increase. And this is what we're calling the inflationary response. Because, you know, with people that we have, they're being fit right now pretty hard. And we don't want to lose any of these guys that we've invested a year in, because now, you know, they can go to get $23 an hour. They're happy here, but it's when you're at a point where you're paying $4 a gallon of fuel, it's tough. And, you know, they have some advantages, no question, but it's hard on their pocketbooks right now, especially. So if you can go ahead to the next. When we did our, this whole thing to bring us into the competitive area for everybody, and this includes not everybody, but engineering. And then you have this putting them into the inflationary response and put them in that competitive band. It would cost the road commission approximately $220,000 for an entire year of that. And then there's $7,000 where people need to be corrected to be moved up into their bandwidth of where they should be benchmarked against the other road commissions. When you talk about the engineering staff, we are talking about modifications to skill sets, because we're no longer going to look for an entry-level engineer. We're going to look for a higher end engineer. So that is going to drive up the cost. We have a couple of people that have already applied since we have Joe's position open. So when you start getting up into that higher range, we feel we can be competitive, and we have them into a benchmarking set of where it should be. Plus, we're looking at hiring a more skilled technician than an entry-level technician, so that we can handle some of these more complex projects in-house and not have to consult out as much. So, you know, there are some things that we're definitely going to reduce the expenses for consulting, because we will have people that are higher qualified. And then we also need to add in another person for GIS and another signal tech. Just because of the number of things we have going on with both of those systems. So under the engineering umbrella, to totally restructure it, move positions around and get them into also these competitive bands for what we're looking for. We're looking at 158,000 extra for a full year. So the total impact to the budget's an additional 385 for a full year, more or less. And then for this year, it would affect us to the tune somewhere around 255, because we're already going to be a third of the year through by the time anything like this could take effect for us. So going on to the next year, these are the type of things that we see that need to be addressed from engineering, and some of the things that we're going to be able to perform better by shifting these priorities around and shifting these positions around to reduce stuff. We're going to have a lot more township cost sharing programs. That new township policy, the cost sharing policy that we approved, we have some significant interest in it. We're going to be meeting with each of these townships over the course of the next month and a half. And there's some interest in getting started. We've also had a couple of SADs. One lady called me on Friday night, and by Sunday, she had 80% of her subdivision signed up for it. So she's a mover. Yeah, she did not take time. Wow. It's not huge, but
Probably my neighbor.
Right.
I mean, she was out there and she collected, and she talked to everybody. So that's out in East, or in Blair Township.
That's amazing.
So,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
it didn't take her long. So, but we have a lot of these coming, you know, and there's a lot of other things. We also have a lot more of these crush and shapes. You know, for the longest time, we were focusing on getting as many of the primary models as we could do. Now we're going to be doing some more of these locals and these through locals especially, but we're also going to be picking up some of those primaries that were harder to deal with. So they're going to be more design involved. And rather than being out there designing, we need to hire 2 engineers that are prepared to come on board right away and are capable and ready to start designing new roads and improvements to roads, fixing these low spots, fixing these swamp areas, dealing with all that. So there's that we can do, and we won't, in theory, need to go out at this point for much in the way of consulting on that. They also are going to need to provide more support to field operations. As field operations skill level is going up with the people that we do have and that we are keeping, they are going to be replacing a lot more culverts in-house. They did a bunch of them last year for non-active streams, and they plan on doing a lot more this summer.
And we can't do it unless we have the staff.
Yeah, and we need that staff, and we need to keep the experienced ones, and we need to get people that will stay for multiple years to learn this. We also have an asset management plan that's due at the end of the year, and at that point, we'd also like to do one of the things that Alan was talking about, the capital improvements plan, which would be kind of like a 5-year forecast. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen in the order we say, but these are the 5-year projects that we're looking out at for what are we looking to do in the neighborhoods, what are we looking to do in the primaries, what are we looking to do as far as, you know, other upgrades to the network. We're also, with the shifting to the through locals, we are also going to be picking up a lot more segments of road, because when you start pairing with the townships, you're not going to be doing a 2-mile stretch of road most of the time. You're going to be hitting, you know, half-mile, because that's what they can afford to deal with. The cost sharing, they still have to bring some funds in. So they're not going to be able to be involved in a lot of 2-mile long projects. They're going to be needing to pick them away and smaller. But we are going to make a lot of impact on the worst segments of road that are these through locals, because those are the ones the townships are saying, you know, they get the complaints too. You know, their people are complaining to them. So that, and then GIS implementation, we are moving forward, continuously collecting more information. We're starting to collect, you know, or looking at collecting signs, and we're starting to collect more on signals, and we're starting to collect more for culverts. So we're going to be developing this GIS system that anybody in the county can click something and see what it is and what's going on. There's also gonna be somebody who's gonna need to be dealing with some consultants when we have to start figuring out where do we need soil boring, surveying, and other complex tasks. They're still gonna need to be able to handle that. Some of these things will continue to be outsourced. These technical specializations, your bridge design and inspections on large scale bridge construction. For a redeck, you know, we have some people in-house that can handle it, but when you start talking about putting in a bridge that has never been there, like we'd be talking about on fighting, you may need somebody to be out there who's had some more experience. Traffic modeling, we are not traffic engineers, so if we ever need to do traffic modeling for long-term forecasting, we're not going to be able to do that. Right now, nobody is at a point where we're capable of designing signalized intersections because we don't know enough about them. But if we can get the right person in from engineering who's either had experience or is ready to go and can pick it up, we could start taking some of those off that list. We're never going to be doing material and density testing just because of the requirements and the hours involved. It's much better to consult that stuff out. Bandwidth considerations, which will always be a discussion, with simply roundabouts, when we do build them, it does take a lot of people to be out there to make sure that that roundabout is going to be placed where it's supposed to be. It's going to be at the right elevation so people coming in around are able to handle it.
They're one-offs.
And right-of-way acquisitions. So when we need to buy property, we aren't really the experts with that. We have the lady who did the purchase of the Cass Road house for us. That's the type of thing, it's just better off to send it to a specialist who's been dealing with it and can handle that type of thing, rather than deal with what we, with the on-state staff. So that's it. So that's kind of where we stand right now, and that's kind of what we feel. I mean, it is a lot of more money, but for us to keep the staff we have, we feel it puts us at least in that area where we can keep people. We lost somebody here in the last week that probably would have stayed if we could have given them a little bit more money. So.
Anybody like to chime in first?
I wasn't here for the conversation, so I'm kind of, I'll let you have your.
Well, you're here now. I mean, essentially,
No, I picked up on it, but I mean, I'd rather you guys stuff.
Well,
Start to pick
You
up
know,
on the
I
conversation.
was talking to Steve on the way in here tonight, and back in the 70s and 80s, the road commission and several other employees in the county, I'm not going to just say road commission, were offering benefits and stuff that, and a wage scale that was near the top of the tier for the area. And now with things, how they've changed, that is kind of flipped on us a little bit. Not that we don't have, I mean, we've got good benefits. I mean, we have the health and we've got some retirement in that, but wages have kind of slipped on us here a little bit, I think. And especially in this job market right now, especially, you know, mechanics out in the shop, mechanics are hard to find. CDL drivers, they can basically pick where they want to work because everybody needs truck drivers and you don't have that. So you have to be competitive in those fields. So, you know, looking at, you know, what you've put up there, it's indicating to me that we're a little bit behind on being competitive. You know, so, you know, I guess to get competitive, are we, you know, down the road, the next year, are we going to be able to sustain those payrolls? You know, that's a question I have.
That's why we looked at it on an annual basis.
Correct.
You know, so when I started the budget this year, and that included benefits too, that we estimated. You know, we were at $5.1 million with these changes and put us at about 5.5 million.
And you know, I mean, we have a lot of unionized employees out there, and that's, you know, that's a very tough atmosphere when you're negotiating wages and that. And I mean, both sides want the best deal for themselves. But I think, you know, and that's good, you know, that they're looking out for themselves and we're looking out for the organization. But sometimes maybe we kind of miss sight of what it really takes to retain these people we've put time into, and they've put time into us. You know, it goes both ways. You know, we've allowed them, you know, to step up to the plate and grow and proceed as far as steps in the organization. But, you know, maybe we haven't kept up with the cost of living either, you know? So, I mean, what you're telling me is we haven't.
Yeah.
Is what I'm seeing on that presentation, that we have slipped behind on that. And in this job market right now, like I said, it's a market where there's a lot of good jobs out there and people can pick and choose a little bit, you know, and we would hope that because of the work atmosphere and what we can offer, that they would pick here. But if the wages, you know, like you said, $4 a gallon for gasoline, that takes a pretty good chunk out of their pay if they drive any distance to work.
Well, I guess this started a whole chain of events, but I have been speaking specifically about the fact that we need more engineering, and we don't expect the Lone Ranger to continue as he is. And I certainly think that the numbers we're talking about, but I would just like to make sure they're high enough so that we can get, you know, to get the professionals we need to make sure we can pay enough money. Our county is, you know, we're growing and we do have money available, and we can't operate without I hate the consultant thing and all the money. If it's going to take more than this, and I realize roundabouts are specialized. I'm not saying we should hire a roundabout guy. We don't need a roundabout guy. But most of this stuff, I would really like to see us be able to handle it. And so what you've talked about in the engineering sequence is we're gonna replace Joe and add one more. Is that where?
Basically, what we're looking
does
at
this
is
number
putting
include
in-
that?
Yes, this does. This puts in that amount that we had for engineering. Basically, instead of hiring, you have Wayne, you had Joe, and then you had an entry-level engineer. What we're proposing here is basically Wayne, Joe 1, Joe 2. We're talking about putting in 2 capable engineers who can run projects, who can fully handle what needs to be done and do with it so that they have enough experience. And we've had 2 applicants already that we feel have the experience, and one of them would be coming from another road commission. So.
And then there would be a tech.
Yeah, and then we're also looking at an advanced tech. So these advanced techs, like the entry-level tech, the problem is it is tougher to keep them busy during the winter because they don't have enough skills. But the advanced techs, like if you look at Chris, who I don't know how many of you even know him, but Chris is one of our, you know, much more experienced. He can go in, he can do the design of a road, hand it off to an engineer can redline it, bring it back to him. He makes the changes to the drawing, gives it back to the engineer. They figure out any last details and the engineer says, okay, fine, that looks good, stamps it and off it goes. So that's taking, by having that higher end tech, you're taking some of the load off of an engineer. And yet also then during the summer, when we do have these complex projects that need inspection, those techs can handle, say, getting a complex project plus jumping over to take a look at chip seal or crack seal or whatever other small project is going on that they need to. So they can bounce back and forth. They've got the experience, they've got the know-how of what needs to happen. They know when they've got to be on site, when they don't, and they can work that out.
And, you know, Brad, I only brought up the engineering because I felt we were so far out of it then. And I don't want to see any other department here overlooked. And you've brought something forward that has some value to us. I think if we have evident shortages in other areas, we need to address those also. It's just the fact that this is construction season and our gun is empty is discouraging. And that's why I'm really, I certainly can support a budget amendment for this.
Well, it sounds like it's supportable. What is the mechanics of moving forward? Do we have to open up the contract?
You approve it. It's a letter of understanding between us and the union. And so you approve it right now. We draw up the letter, say this is our new schedule of wages. We approve that schedule of wages in April. May 2nd, it would take effect.
Could I just say one more thing, though, Gio, please? Could we have a schedule of what the proposed wages for the positions top to bottom And could we address this next week at our meeting? Our regular meeting? Just so we could have a minute to. I have an alternate thought as well. If everyone is kind of done at this point. All right, well, I got a couple of questions. I just got to get my train of thought in here. First of all, Foreman, are you union?
No,
Okay, you're not union.
no,
Okay.
because we're admin.
Okay. And then
And Rick isn't actually a foreman.
Right.
Rick's the supervisor.
the supervisor, I'm sorry.
Kevin's sitting right there. He's a
There you go.
foreman.
Okay, there you go. Okay, fine, yeah. All right, okay, are these numbers here, do they represent the top that we're comparing to, or do they represent a mid somewhere in the soft underbelly of it all?
They, depending on who they are, they fall into a different point on that bandwidth. So like if they're new to the position, they may be lower on the bandwidth range. If they've been there for a lot of years, they may be higher on. It's a lot of it is based on their experience, their qualifications, and what we are built out to
Who
handle.
worked on this? You, Phil?
It was me, Jay, Heather, and Phil predominantly, and then Wayne came in and talked to us more about engineering to make sure we were on the right ballpark with engineering.
All right, I want to say this. I think what you brought to us is great information. This is good stuff. This is the kind of stuff I'd like to see a little more often, honestly. And I would support, like Joe said, this, honestly, we can afford this. And if it, I mean, a lot of you who are working here, I mean, clearly, Larry doesn't get anything because there's nobody to compare to, but
This makes it okay. So.
Yeah.
Steve, Joe, we want to throw him in there too. But I think, I mean, we have to figure it out. Now, the only other question that I really have about this, can we, instead of opening up a union contract, can we bonus out right now retentions, per quarter or something, instead, just for the retention kind of aspect of it. Basically, if you work through that quarter, you will get, the bonus, or if you're new, you can prorate it up to it or something, but.
The only problem we see with that, and the problem that Heather has, is that puts your posting for that job position, for the hourly rate of that posting, still is very low. We don't get very many responses.
Well, I was
Yeah,
thinking
no.
just, in the interim, until our contract.
Either way, even to give them a bonus, we still have to have a letter of understanding. They cannot accept that without having a letter of understanding in place.
And everything else stays the same.
Yeah, that's the only thing we're talking about is modifying their wage.
So
benefit.
I think the appropriate,
Everything else,
I think
yes.
the appropriate motion would be to authorize management to give us a wage schedule to approve at our next, available, or at next possible available.
And you have the union.
Mhm.
So we did we did draft out what the union scales would be based on where we are and what it is, because that low guy gets 9%, but the high guy gets 3.6%. So effectively, instead of a scale like this, you're
You're gonna compress it a little.
You're compressing it, so it's 4% instead of 5% between each of the positions. Instead of, when you move from a tier 1 to a tier 2, instead of getting 5%, you get 4%, but you start out higher and it balances out nicely. And then that tops of the scale moved up 3.6.
And no blowback because of the difference in percentages. We don't anticipate.
We have not heard any issues. So there's your current, blow that up a little bit, Jay, thank you. And the proposed. And take into account, the heavy duty truck technician is low, but they get certificate dollars for each certificate that they maintain. So
Okay.
for up to 7 total certificates.
So it's that plus.
Plus $7, if they have everything.
It's $1 per certificate, is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so they end up,
with
so
a
they can
stamp.
end up being 20, they would end up being like now they're 27.46. If they have everything, they would go to 28.20 if they have it.
And that only applies to the truck technician. There, we don't
Yeah,
have, we
everything, no,
don't, we don't
there's
have
no
all
other
these
certificate.
other.
The only other thing would be like
things
crew
that the other-
leaders. Crew leaders get a little extra,
To be
but it's a fixed amount. It's not on a percentage.
Then I'm looking at the difference between 22 and 23. That's just the adjusted per the contract.
2%.
That's per the contract.
That's what they have in for next year's.
Right.
Increase is another 2%. So we're just telling them, look, we're gonna bump you up this much now.
Yeah.
And then 2% still applies to next year. And who knows?
Well, when the contract comes up, I can tell you, we're gonna have a little harder time negotiating that 2%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm sure we will.
Oh, yeah.
But this certainly is a good faith effort.
Yeah.
It's not-
Yeah, it puts, so nobody in the road commission, after this is done, nobody in the road commission will be outside that bookend of what they have for their position. And so, you know, we have more. I mean, if you want to get into more, we can show you more. But it gets into the weeds if you really want to see everything.
Do we need to approve tonight to be able to get your mate?
I'd like to have the union portion of it approved, because if the union portion is approved, we can start work on the letter of understanding, get the letter of understanding, then you guys approve the
So
letter of
approve the drafting
understanding.
of the memorandum of
You're the
understanding.
one that wants schedule set for that.
Oh, that's,
This is the draft.
Yeah.
Better
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah,
well, I would like to see top to bottom though,
Every single person.
all other employees.
and where they are now and where they will
Well,
be.
what you're gonna, what the proposal is, but if you wanna adopt this now, I don't have any problem with supporting that.
This would take care of all the unions.
Yeah, because what this will do, this will then get us moving on that letter of understanding, so that when we come back for the total approval, they will in theory have already signed on the letter of understanding, then you guys approve it, and then I'll sign it, and off it goes.
And then, and at that point, we could disapprove it, not approve it at all. But I'm not saying we're not gonna do that. That's not what I'm saying. But just because you go out and seek that, we still have to approve that, even if they approve.
You're still gonna
We still
say,
have to
because
approve
this
that.
is a financial thing, we're still gonna bring it back to you for a vote.
Right.
Like if we make other changes in the union contract that are
I'll make a motion.
significant.
Joe's made the motion to approve that,
I'll support it.
and Carl.
Or Alan.
All right. Any other discussion?
Don't, you can leave me out, but
I think-
I'm happy with this.
No, I commend staff. I mean,
Yeah.
just the organization as a whole, this is a proactive thing, right? I mean, that we
This is good work.
manage roads, but yet, I mean, we really, I say the internal team
I will say,
working together to make this a better
Jay,
place.
Jay,
to work.
Jay put a lot of hours into data collection, and Heather did a lot to get us organized, to make sure we were all in the same room at the same time, and talk about the right order of how we need to do these, so it was a lot of support. Phil gave us numbers, and he probably got sick and tired of me asking for numbers, but,
This is good work.
so.
All right, Kylie?
Brown,
Yes.
Andrus,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Gilman.
Yes. All right, thanks. That's good progress. All right, that brings us to our second public comment. Does anybody wish to, oh, yeah, that's it.
Second public comment.
Second public comment. Yeah, we just,
Okay.
we did
All
that.
right.
in
Yep,
GIT.
yep, yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah, would anybody care to comment? All right, manager's comments.
Okay, so there's just two things. Make sure everybody is aware that Tom Slater did withdraw his request to video our meetings, because he felt like we had the technology in-house. But he did say that looks like he's kind of like, he said himself, I think the dinosaur in the room or something to that
That's
effect.
exactly what he said.
Yeah, so- But yeah, so he did say that, if it's something you still want to pursue and talk to him, we can still have him talk to us again and get some ideas.
Just on that, let's keep his phone number, I mean,
Okay.
in case it somehow helps us. I mean,
Okay.
for example, if we wanted to have it streamed on the cable.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
it's just the internet.
You know, and with what we've got coming up, he reaches a little bit different market.
He does.
And than what we've got here. And, you know.
$50 a meeting is not.
I think it's very,
Yeah.
you know, it's more transparency on our part, the more people we can reach. And like you said, $50 is, I mean, it's
I mean, he
$50,
sets up the
but
microphones, he comes in here and he zooms in on us and
for the
he.
length of time that he's here,
Yeah,
it's pretty.
Basically the price of a per diem.
So I think, you know, I think Brad, you should reach out to him and just see what he has to say, I think.
All right.
That's my opinion.
Okay. Second thing is, we are having issues with obtaining vehicles again from GM. They are reducing their output due to lack of chips and everything else. But Dan's been doing some research and we hopefully will have a price for next meeting on the potential of getting a GMC Terrain.
Terrain, yep.
So it's like a smaller SUV than what I drive, but it would function well for us, for people that just need to go out in the field. So when Larry needs a vehicle to go out in the field, or even when Wayne does, he doesn't need to take his, you know, all his equipment with him for something. Or, you know, we need to send somebody down to Mount Pleasant for meetings. We can put 4 people in it and it gets good gas mileage. It's cheaper than a truck. It serves a lot of purposes. So we're looking at that and we're talking to them about potentially getting not quite the same color, it's cherry red instead of what?
Crimson.
Instead of crimson. So be a little different color,
In
but
the red
hey,
family.
it's in the red family, right?
Get it dirty.
So we're looking at, you know, other ways to fill voids for vehicles, but it's tough right now. So we're having some issues trying to get our pickups, which means that when we talk about replacement schedules, some of our vehicles that we thought we were gonna have on a 4-year replacement might be pushed out 5 or 6 years, unfortunately, just because there's nothing available.
Well, they're still worth as much.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we're selling them for as much as we're buying them for. so-
Right, so.
If you buy it,
I'm right.
well, yeah.
So that being said, just so you're aware, tomorrow is Go Orange Day. So everybody in the road commission is gonna be wearing orange. We got t-shirts for everybody because it's this is safety week for construction people. And so everybody's gonna be out there in their orange t-shirts and we have a safety meeting tomorrow afternoon to go over some of the things before the construction season begins. So other than that, that was pretty much all I wanted to make sure you were aware of.
Might as well start at the end.
Yeah, so I know there's some things that I think we need to talk about, right? Some more of like full philosophical things we would like to see from staff, things that, you know, maybe direction we want to go as a road commission, if it relates to roundabouts or testing or consultants or things. And so maybe I would prefer we do that in a special meeting where we just have a conversation about those things and not bog down a meeting where we have to make this, like, keep a regular.
Not a special meeting, but a study session.
Keep the study session.
Or a retreat of some
Just
sort.
for something, yeah, so we don't extend out our regular meetings, where the meetings where we have to do business, like, let's keep those like regular meetings to do business. No, we can't talk about anything, but I think there's a few things in the last couple months that have piled up that it might just be nice to just have a conversation, like a study session or whatever it is, but outside of our regular board meeting, you know, or to have these conversations during a meeting where we're voting on it or talking about big things. I would write the kind of meeting separate the two and have maybe an extra meeting and just so we can.
And we could include with that, you know, talking some strategic plan initiatives based on what you guys want us to see from us. We can set that up in a strategic plan format so that we're actually developing specific targets, goals, and objectives.
Just set the expectations for what we want to see from staff too, so we can avoid some of the heartache or the discussion when we're actually going to vote on something. So that's just my comments. But again, I commend the staff. I mean, I think as an organization, you know, we're a road commission, but we're doing things, if it's IT or if it's looking at our salary, looking at retention, and I mean, we're doing good business things that I don't think the road commission has done historically in the past. And I think there's that aspect of it being proactive. And I think that's a good thing.
Joe?
I don't have much to add. No, I'm good. I like this, I would like to do study sessions, because I think there's a lot of stuff that I know some of the other road commissions around us meet every 2 weeks. I don't know that we necessarily need to do that, but I think we might need to meet more every quarter.
I believe this one used to every 2 weeks. Years ago.
Yeah, you tell us you want to meet every two.
I don't know.
No, I'm just saying, I'm just saying. that, yeah.
We should have a meeting.
They used to, though. It wasn't.
The other thing is if you were to do it quarterly too, you could also do it potentially on a Saturday or, something where it's something we could sit down for more than 2-3 hours and not have to, have people coming home from work, getting done, and then having to come here for 3 hours.
So just like us to think about the future a little bit to be able to communicate some of these things with each other.
Well, for me, again, thank you. You made me very happy, I think, with the way that you guys pulled this essentially as a wage study.
Right.
And we didn't have to hire a consultant to do it.
Well, you told us it had to be done
Well,
in-house,
no, but I
and
mean,
we did.
I-
And I want to tell you.
This is better than anything I've seen from a consultant in a wage study. They overcomplicate things.
And I'm not gonna guarantee 100% that the people that worked on it are gonna be here for the rest of the week, all week, because they're all tired.
No, and
But it was.
thank you for your time into this, because that's important stuff, and we have to go where we have to go. I do, when we talk about getting together, we definitely need to approach competition things, okay? We have a top tier OHM, for example. If they're always the top tier, there's no competition, it's always a no bid. Somehow we need to, I'm sorry, but I snicker because I can't see that as a logical way to protect the interests of the taxpayers. I just can't. We have to have, there has to be somebody else who's willing to at least, if they're always higher, that's great, but willing to offer those services. And if we never go outside of OHM, we're always going to be beholden to OHM, and we're going to be just basically feeding their high priced or high paid employees. We definitely need to clarify the bid process. I just, whether it be a couple of days added to the deadline before for changes and whatnot, but we need to clarify the bid process. Just to be fair to the people, frankly, who don't get the job all the time, so there's that. And the only other thing I have to say is you guys can let the crews know the help's on the way. I mean, clearly our intent is to make things better.
And we have
and to keep them here.
We have a 2 o'clock or 2:30 meeting.
Tell the guys who are leaving, it's not too late. Come back to us. You're not dead yet.
Come to the meeting.
What?
That's what I say.
Other than that, and we'll work on yours too, Larry. I know. So other than that,
Motion to adjourn.
we are adjourned.
All right.